Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to William Paterson University for the dedication of the George and Dorothy Hennings Science Hall East. Before we start, I wanted to welcome Dorothy's friends and family to campus once again, and also recognize some of the university VIPs who have joined us today. Would the university trustees please stand and be recognized? Members of our University Foundation, could you please stand? Thank you. And members of our College of Science and Health, Dean, Associate Dean, and faculty members, could you please rise? Thank you all for joining us on this momentous day for the university and for the Grant and Hennings families. As we proceed with the festivities, I thank Dorothy for her unwavering commitment and philanthropic generosity to William Paterson University. Today's gathering is about so much more than just a building. Today is a celebration of George and Dorothy's rich life, generous spirit, and now their legacy. It is now my pleasure to introduce Jennifer Mazaway, Chair of the William Paterson University Bylaws Committee and member of the Foundation's Committee on Directors. Jennifer is also a partner at the law firm Genova Burns. Jennifer?
Thank you, Pam. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jennifer Mazaway. I'm a member of the William Paterson University Foundation, and I'm very pleased to be here today to welcome you to the dedication of George and Dorothy Hennings Science Hall East. The William Paterson University Foundation is committed to raising funds in support of academic excellence and student success at this great institution. On behalf of the board of the foundation, it is my honor to recognize the generosity of Dr. Dorothy Hennings and her late husband, Dr. George Hennings, whose transformative gift we recognize today. I'm keenly aware of the incredible impact that this gift will have on our students, not only as an active member of our foundation, but also as a spouse of a William Paterson alum. I want to express my deepest gratitude to Dr. Hennings for this incredible investment in the future of our students on behalf of my fellow board members, the alumni of the university, and the students of William Paterson. Now it's my honor to introduce Michael Allen Sieve, the former chair of the foundation board and the current chair of the William Paterson University Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Jennifer. We are truly excited to gather here today to recognize this very generous donation from Dr. Dorothy Grant Hennings and her late husband, Dr. George Hennings, to William Paterson University. As we recognize this gift today with the dedication of the George and Dorothy Hennings Science Hall East, I'd like to tell you a bit about Dorothy and George. Dr. Dorothy Grant Hennings is the second daughter of William Albert Grant and Ethel Mull Grant, both of whom were silk manufacturers in Paterson, New Jersey. She received her undergraduate degree from Barnard College in 1956 and went on to earn a master's degree in education from the University of Virginia in Charlottesville and a doctorate in education from Teachers College, Columbia University in New York. She began her career as a science and English teacher in Rutherford and later Fair Lawn. In 1965, she joined the educational faculty at Newark State College, which later became Kean University. During her tenure as a professor at Kean, she authored 50 textbooks and guides for teachers and children with prominent publishers and was the founder and editor of nationally recognized juried periodical School Connections, the official journal of Kean College of Education. She received the Outstanding Teacher, Educator, and Reading Award from the International Reading Association, amongst her other honors. Upon her retirement from Kean in 2002, Dr. Grant Hennings was awarded the title of Distinguished Professor Emerita. Dr. George Hennings, who died in 2016, earned his bachelor's and master's degree from Montclair State University, a master's degree from Rutgers University in ecology and limnology, and a doctorate in education from Teachers College, Columbia University. He halted his undergraduate studies to serve as a sergeant technician in the U.S. Army Signal Corps during World War II from 1943 to 1946. He began his career as a science teacher in New York and New Jersey, and in 1960, he joined Kean University as a member of the biology faculty. At Kane, he developed the university's program in secondary school science education and established courses in geology and astronomy. He was a life member of the American Association of the Advancement of Science and the National Science Teachers Association, and together with his wife, he authored 2 books, Keep Earth Clean, Blue and Green, and Today's Elementary Social Studies. He retired from Kane as well as Distinguished Professor Emeritus. It was at Kane that Dorothy and George met and fell in love. They married in 1968 and were linked professionally by their love of education and their love for travel, which took them around the world, and for philanthropy, which led them generously to support Kane University. Their connection to William Patterson was fostered through Dorothy's sister, the late Dr. Barbara Mull Grant, a William Patterson alumna and Professor Emerita of Education, who introduced them to the university. After Dr. Grant's death in 2009, Dorothy continued to develop her own relationship with William Patterson, establishing the Dorothy and George Hennings Endowed Scholarships in Science and culminating in the gift we honor today. Now, through this very generous and transformative gift, students at William Patterson University in the science disciplines will benefit from scholarship support and research support that will assist them in obtaining their dreams of a college education, as well as funds in support of innovative programs across the university. We are so grateful to Dr. Dorothy Hennings Grant and her late husband, Dr. George Hennings, for their very generous support of William Patterson University and its students. And it is my honor to thank them and recognize them today on behalf of the Board of Trustees. Now let me introduce President Richard J. Heldobler to present his remarks.
Thank you, Michael, and thanks to everyone who's here today, and also special thanks to Pam and the Institutional Advancement Team for arranging today's event. I think it's important that we all just take a moment to sort of relish in the fact that we were able to gather today in person for this very special occasion to mark the renaming of Science Hall East and its dedication as Hennings Hall, in thanks and recognition to the generous and transformational gift from Dr. Dorothy Grant Hennings and her late husband, Dr. George Hennings. This will be an easy place for many students to remember because they gravitate to alliteration. So Hennings Hall will be an easy place for students to gather, I'm sure. So for those of you who were with us last fall for the dedication of the former Preakness Hall as Grant Hall in honor of her late sister, Professor Emerita Dr. Barbara Mull Grant, will recall Dorothy's wonderful recollections of the histories of Patterson, or of the city of Patterson, and what is now William Patterson University, and their family's deep connections to both. Dorothy, George, and Barbara are all highly accomplished academics. The Doctors Hennings both made their professional home at what is now Kane University. In fact, that's where Dorothy and George, a professor of biology, as Michael alluded to, first met. And they both retired as emeriti professors, and together they're longtime philanthropic supporters of that institution. Here at William Patterson, we are fortunate that Barbara made her way to our campus, first as a student and later as a faculty member, where she had a tremendous impact on generations of students as well as on the field of teacher education. And now, thanks to the special bond of family and shared values and purpose centered on higher education, and more importantly, access to it, William Patterson is the fortunate and very grateful recipient of the transformative gift on behalf of Dorothy and George. These funds will provide additional generous support toward the already established Barbara M. Grant Endowed Scholarship, as well as additional generous support for the already established George and Dorothy Hennings Endowed Scholarship. It will also provide support for student research in the science disciplines in the College of Science and Health. And finally, it will provide significant funding to create an endowed fund in George and Dorothy's name, which will provide unrestricted support for strategic initiatives of the university. Such funds will assist William Patterson in making bold, transformative moves on behalf of student success through innovative new programs. Given the ongoing disruption across higher education and beyond, such support will become increasingly important to the health and vitality of the university and the success of our students. Dorothy and George had a combined 63 years. Just think about that. 63 years of teaching and service at Kean University. Dorothy Grant Hennings Hall and the Dorothy and George Hennings College of Science, Mathematics and Technology at Kean's Union Campus are just the most visible sign of their extensive impact there. Now, with this transformative gift and the Hennings name on this science building, these two great New Jersey public universities, William Patterson and Kean, will be linked by this wonderful family. I, of course, want to thank Dr. Grant Hennings and her late husband, George, for making this all possible. We also want to take this moment to remember both George and Barbara. Thank you all for believing in and investing in William Patterson and our students. Your support truly is an investment in New Jersey's future. I know that as someone who was born here and dedicated your life to making it a better place, you know full well the power and the potential of this region, its university, and its people. And the fact that you have given your professional lives and now have supported these two great universities through these transformative gifts, you see education as a moral obligation to public service. Again, on behalf of everyone at William Patterson, thank you so very much. And now I would like to invite Dr. Grant Hennings to the podium to present her with a token of our appreciation and have her share Ode to George. Thank you. I will.
You know, you all know, or many of you know, that I was devastated when I lost my dearly beloved husband, George, way back. Now it's been a little bit over 5 years. And to help me heal, to help me overcome the sadness of living alone after having lived with George for 48 years, I decided I needed a plan for recovery. And really, my plan had, I guess, almost 3 components. Yes, I made sure that we had all those buildings and titles down at Kean. After all, that's where the two of us had worked together for 63 years, and that's where George always said, he found me. Yes, he always said, we had a little story, and he'd say, oh, I found you down there. And I'd say, well, how did you find me? And he said, well, you, Dorothy, stood out from the other funnies down there. Yes. At any rate, the second aspect of my plan came about when I came up to William Patterson to find a building for my sister. And Pamela, dear lady, took me to see that. And then, of course, she had to sell me on the whole university. And we walked, and we walked, and we walked through all of these areas. And she didn't know that I had another agenda in mind, but eventually I figured it out, and she figured it out, and we came here today. And we have here Hennings Hall East. When I see that makes me feel pretty good, I'll have to say. It's my way of remembering and thinking about my husband. You know, this is a funny thing to say, but and I don't say it very often, my husband married me knowing I could not have children. And that's loving, isn't it? Yes. And so we have no direct heirs, no one to carry on George's name or his genes, but we have something else. We have Hennings Science Hall. Well, then that was only part of my plan for recovery. You know, I was a writer. I wrote all those scientific things and education things. Yes, yes. And so, this is my dear friend Jenny Yu up front, right here. When Jenny lost her husband about a year ago, maybe it was a little bit over a year, in April, she asked me to speak at her husband's celebration of life. And at that time, I was prepared with a nice, lengthy, speech, formal, education, professor type, and I didn't. I woke up in the night and I wrote an ode to Arthur. That was her husband. I liked him too. But at any rate, let's see. After I wrote the ode to Arthur, then I wrote the ode to Patterson and Silk and the Grant family and that thing. I think in between I also wrote an ode to Fellowship Village, where we live. And then I wrote the ode to George. And of course for me, that's a favorite one. But in between that, I guess it was after that, after I wrote the ode to George, which I'm going to share today, COVID hit. And again, all by myself, living in a house, all by myself, eating 3 meals a day, all by myself. I thought I'd go crazy, I have to admit it. But my interest in writing saved me. Some of you have seen my most recent book that I wrote during COVID, and it's called, I'm selling this now, you see. Wandering, yes, it's on Amazon. Wandering the World with George, a travel memoir. But I should have had a different title on it. It should have not said a travel memoir. It should have said a love story, because it truly is. And I probably have read my book more thoroughly than anybody else, because sometimes on an evening when I'm alone and kind of a bit down, I find a nice story about us in this book, and I read my own book. And by the time I'm ready to go to bed, I'm a happy camper again. Well, let me share my an ode to George, a love poem. And some of you have heard this before, but I figured it worked once, I can do it again. My husband loved the earth, stood in awe before the universe, marveled as the seasons spun to bring the green of Earth's rebirth. Biologist, ecologist, sometimes even geologist, George knew the worth of planet Earth. Of Earth, George never ever had enough. George gloried in the joys of travel. He loved to cross the mountain peaks, the ocean deep, the rivers wide. He loved to cross the bays, the capes, the canals, the valleys, the plains, the isles, the continents of this land. Of travel, George never ever had enough. I call my George my Renaissance man. He truly, truly was. He knew the rocks. He knew the fauna. He knew the water. He knew the flora of all of our land. He knew the stars in the night dark sky. He paused to wonder, question why. But my man knew much, much more than that. He knew the books, the literature of then and now. He knew the art, the music of past and present days. He knew the ways of people, life's historic ways. Of life, George never ever had enough. George was my life. I was his dearest, dearest wife. I loved him. I loved him for his zeal for living. I loved him for his open honesty. I loved him for his humbleness. I loved him for his warm, sweet smile, his genuine gentlemanness. I don't think there's a word like that. Of him, I never, ever had enough. George taught me much of what I know, to see and love the land with open eyes and helpful hand, to care for, this line is important, to generously give to those without, to love all living things about. Yes, he taught me this and much, much more. My George, my sweetheart, departed earth. More than 5 years ago, he took his final trip, his final cruise, his final voyage into the space out there somewhere, leaving me to grieve, to weep, to shoulder on, alone. But, he left me wonderful, wonderful memories. Memories of perfect moments shared. Of waltzing at the Temple of Heaven one Easter Sunday morning. Yes, we really did that. We square professors. We got up there and we danced in this garden area. It was gorgeous. Of listening to hyenas cry across darkened Kenyan sky. Of walking with penguins on Falkland land. Of seeing Sydney seabirds dipping and diving, lit at night, brilliantly bright. Of watching sun set down in sparkling sea and moon cast white its ribbon of light on all eternity. Of wandering the world, just he with me. I still miss my Renaissance man, the feel of his kiss, the feel of my hand held safe in his, the brightness, the brilliance of his mind to toss ideas about and give support when something went amiss. Today, my George, my dear George, we give you this, your surname in letters bold and tall, Hennings Hall. No one will ever forget my Renaissance man. His name now engraved upon the wall of this fantastic Science Hall. What would my man say if here with us today? My George would simply smile his gentle smile, gently wave his hand at us, and say what he always said when on some far-off peak or shore. So often, he would stand back, and you know, this is in the book, so you better read it. So often, he would stand back and say with awe, I never ever dreamt I would stand here. I never ever dreamt I would see this. I never ever dreamt I would be one with this. What a beautiful day, and isn't it a beautiful day today? What a beautiful day this is for George, my George, for me, for this great school, William Patterson University. Thank you all for sharing this day with me, with my dear George. Listen to this date. Born June 16, 1922. If he were here today, he would be very close to being 100 years old. I'm not yet 100. I'll say it again. Born June the 16th, 1922. Cruised into eternity, September the 27th, 2016. To all of you I say, at this harsh time, keep safe, keep well, keep hope alive, and dream big dreams. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. And I appreciate you listening.
Thank you, Dorothy, for that wonderful, wonderful, heartfelt ode to George. We all feel like we know him a little better. So, will today's speakers please gather behind the ribbon for the cutting ceremony? Dorothy, you have the place of honor at the center with the ceremonial scissors.
1, 2, 3. Congratulations.
Thank you all for participating in today's ribbon cutting ceremony. I would like to give a shout out to a couple of folks. Meredith, where are you, Meredith? Oh, there you are, Meredith and Lynn, and the rest of my team. But I'd also like to give a shout out to Kevin Garvey and Jim Shelley, who absolutely made the grounds and area look incredibly beautiful, so thank you. If you all look over your right shoulder, you will see University Commons. Those individuals that have received an invitation to continue the celebration with Dorothy and her family, please follow the University Cabinet and Trustee and Foundation Board members to UC 211 for a light lunch on the veranda overlooking Hennings Hall East. The elevators and stairs are on the right-hand side inside this building, halfway through the building. Thank you. I look forward to seeing you there.